Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video, I wanted to talk about the natal aspect Venus square Mars. These extremely fun, expressive people. Let's talk about this aspect. Okay, when we have Venus, our love planet, what we desire, a part of our feminine energy, what we value in this tense conflict with Mars, how we go after what we want, our masculine energy, our like mojo, right? And so when we have these in conflict, there is a lot of tension in the personality. Now, this tension can lead to a lot of action and creativity. This is the type of person that can have many creative pursuits all going at once. And so there can be a real gift for creation, but it's creation because of restlessness and inner tension. And with all this creativity that they have and all this sexual energy that they have, which we'll talk about that as well, relationships can be quite difficult for people with this square. They're much more successful at other pursuits than love life, usually. And not that they can't become successful in the love life, but this is one of the more challenging areas because they don't know how to have a balance between the masculine and feminine energies. So, what that can look like is it can look like them being overly aggressive in certain romantic situations or even just social situations. Sometimes they can be very overbearing, sometimes even in some cases they can be like downright rude or crude or definitely off-putting to people with a very overly direct or kind of, stepping on other people's toes energy. So sometimes they can be like that. And other times they can be far too passive, far too people pleasing, even. They can have an inability to say no to others. They can go along with things that they don't want to be doing. There's like not a good balance of giving and receiving. Sometimes they can be much more comfortable being the giver, and they're in relationships where they're just always giving and they're giving everything. They're giving their all to this person without receiving back. So there's a power imbalance in the relationship. Or it can be the exact opposite. They're in a relationship, they're doing all the taking. They're just taking and they're taking and they're taking. So usually it can be a bit of both, but you have to look at the signs too of Venus and Mars, what one is stronger. And that's going to give you a good picture of like, are they more Mars ruled or are they more Venus ruled, right? So, like, for example, if Mars is in Scorpio or Aries or something, then Mars is in a pretty strong position and Mars probably overrules Venus a lot of the time. But if Venus is in a stronger sign, Venus rules Libra or something like that. We've got Venus in Libra, Mars in Cancer. Mars doesn't do very well in Cancer. Venus rules Libra. We're going to have more of a Venusian energy, right? Because Mars in Cancer has an inability to stand up for itself in a way that is constructive. And then, Venus is stronger in that case. So, you have to look at that too to see more of what's going on, but it definitely shows a lot of inner tension. And this tension reflects in their relationships. Sometimes people with a square will be very selfish people in some cases, not all the time, but sometimes you're going to see that. One of my favorite books, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, says that these people are living through their animal self. Their animal self needs to be reined in. They're kind of living through the lustfulness of, their animal instincts. So that would be like if we're having a stronger Mars here in this case. So I feel like it doesn't have to go that way. It can go that way if Mars is stronger, but sometimes it'll be the opposite, that actually we could use a little more Mars. We're letting Venus overpower Mars, right? And especially in women too, who, it's more accepted to be Venus. People with Venus square Mars that are women, they might be overly people pleasing or end up in relationships with men that are the attributes of that Mars, right? They're dominating, they're bossy, they're controlling, they're even abusive maybe, or overly sexual. They can attract men that are only interested in that. Actually, men and women with this square, it's very common that they attract people who use them or who have selfish motivations or who just want one thing from them, and that is that thing. And maybe on some level this is some sort of karma thing, some karmic correction, but it can be outgrown, it can be overcome. The first step is awareness, and also like reprogramming the inner messages. They might on some level have like an inner dialogue that is saying, well, that's all I'm good for. Nobody wants to actually love me. They just want to use me, or they just want me because of this or that. And they definitely do have a very sexual vibe. Like if you even just look at, like if you Google like celebrities with this square or something, like there's they exude like I would say like a sex vibe. Like they look like you would consider them to be hot, or like they can have that kind of vibe going on, but also there can be kind of like a selfish energy, or you could see how they would attract a selfish energy to them as well. It's very interesting. And sometimes, I don't want to say all the time, because sometimes they can be very Venus, very beautiful, but sometimes there is almost like and I love you guys. I think you guys are great looking, but there can sometimes be a bit of an awkward look to people with this square. Like they have that sexy vibe, but like as far as like actual beauty, like there might be like something, not symmetrical about their appearance, or just something, like that maybe makes them feel insecure or makes them feel like an outcast. And then like maybe they don't truly feel beautiful, so they have to lead with their sexual energy. Now, that's not going to be in all cases, but that's something that I've observed is like there can be a bit of an awkwardness because, inherently here we feel like what we want, Venus, right? We don't always have the adequate skills or confidence to get it because our Mars is not in agreement with our Venus. So we find when we go after what we want and like they go for something, they're either too much or not enough. And this can end up leading to a lot of inner frustration and tension and feelings of, well, I never get what I want, or what I want doesn't want me, or maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not good looking enough, maybe I'm not, good enough in some other way. Like, so it can be very frustrating because they don't know why they're off-putting to others. They don't know why what they're doing doesn't work to get them the love or the money that they want. This can extend to financial things as well, because Venus does represent our money situation too, so, and our self-worth. So because the square is kind of an unconscious aspect, it's like we don't quite know what we're doing wrong, but yet we just keep going and going forward and forward. And it's like this frustrating aspect of constant action, but we don't realize why we're having this reaction from other people. Why are people running away from me when I'm, trying to start up a conversation, or like when I try to ask out the girl, why is she ignoring me? Or, there can be conflicts, issues here with that. And that can lead to sometimes in men like being overly aggressive because they feel like that's the only way they can be heard is like, well, I have to just be super dominant, right? Or, and sometimes women with this aspect, same thing, they can be super dominant or the opposite, like, oh, I just have to be super passive, just totally like wait for everything to come to me. And like either way they're doing it, there's some form of imbalance between I'm going to go out and get that thing or that thing is going to come to me, right? It's like there's no balance. They're either too aggressive or too passive, and they need to find out how to successfully merge the energies. Now, some signs are easier to do that than others, right? Fixed signs are pretty hard, right? Because fixed signs don't really want to budge. But, if the square's in mutable signs, this might be easier to resolve, like the mutable signs, like Pisces and Sagittarius, like they got a lot in common, right? Even Virgo and Gemini, less in common, but, we're still mental signs, right? So maybe a little bit easier in those signs, but some of the other signs, difficult, right? It's challenging to have this square. And some of the signs are more lustful than others too, because that can be a big issue here is there's this lust for, of course, that aspect, but also just life in general. Like these people want to live, they want to experience life. They do not want to withhold anything from themselves. So that can lead to also even things like overeating, overspending, like they can lack balance in other areas too. It's not just love and sex, although that's the main area, of course, but they might learn in their life that, things require moderation, and that's not something that comes natural to them because they do naturally have this very like full zest for life, like the conjunction of Venus and Mars. They just want to experience it all and taste it all and try it all, right? And that can lead to some excessive behaviors, and that can impact health. Health can be impacted here with this square. So yeah, learning moderation, learning to rein in that lust for life and sex. There can be they can be the ones that are the sex addicts with this square too, because there's that imbalance going on. They're searching for that self-worth. They're searching for that high of like the masculine and feminine merged together, which they don't have internally, right? So you could see why there's a need to seek it externally so much, because they're trying to balance that inner masculine and feminine that they probably never saw personified in their childhood. Like they didn't see people being in a healthy relationship, likely. And so it's hard to recreate this. It's hard to figure out what a healthy relationship even looks like. People with this square, there's something that we do in theta healing. This is one of my energy healing trainings that I have, where you download a feeling into someone's energy, because sometimes people don't actually know what something feels like. Now, people with this square might not know what a healthy relationship feels like. They might not know what it feels like to be in a relationship where the giving and receiving is like mutual, right? They don't know what that feels like. They've only ever been in imbalanced situations. So when they do get in a relationship that's actually healthy, it might feel boring or off. It's like, what is this? I don't know. I don't know what to do with this, right? So by downloading these feelings of like, I know what it feels like to be in a healthy relationship. I know what it feels like to, equally give and receive from someone I'm with in an intimate relationship or sexually, that's going to be a game changer for them. And it is possible for them. It is meant for them. It is likely that through this square and through, butting their head up against the wall of this conflict that they have, they will come to resolution, and they will come to be even like an expert of relationships. Like these could be the people teaching on masculine, feminine energy dynamics and, how to be in a healthy relationship, how to be in, an exciting sexual relationship. Like they could be the sex coaches or the love coaches or whatever, because not because it came naturally, because it was something they had to work on and they were forced to work on and deal with in this lifetime. So they can become the experts more than people with the conjunction or the trine or the sextile, right? Because this has been a challenging thing for them. So, what else do I want to say about this one? They're definitely very charismatic people too. Like when they're telling a story or when they're in, like they walk into a room, they do it with such flair, right? So there's a real colorful personality with actually all Venus Mars aspects, but the square definitely, you notice them. You notice them a lot, and they, barge into the room like, hey, they're there, and they're impossible to ignore with their charisma and energy. And I think they don't realize how charismatic they are and how actually, in some cases, they could do less. They don't need to be like the star of every show and like the most noticed person in every room. They already are just by their energy. They don't have to do so much. See, that's the thing, is like when Mars is stronger, right? They just think they need to always do and, constant action in order to be noticed by a love interest or by someone socially. They think they have to be like the life of the party. You don't have to. Your energy is enough. You're going to be noticed, okay? When you have this square. You're full of life, and you will be till late in your age. You'll never stop being full of life, full of a desire for life experiences and sexual experiences. The sex drive does not decrease with this aspect. It might increase, actually, because confidence increases with age and time. So, yeah, as difficult as it is, there's many benefits to this square. And yeah, I hope this video has helped you see that and also maybe click in some awarenesses you hadn't. Because yeah, you might not, with this square, be the most self-reflective person until later in life too, because you're more of an action person. So yeah, very, very interesting people with this square. I'd love to know your experience of this. If you have it in your natal chart, I'd love to know how it's been for you, or if you're with someone with this, let me know in the comments. And love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Talk soon. Bye.